We're coming up on Impact's 1 year anniversary, 5 years as a church, 1 year evolved. So, Pastor, tell us about the road to Impact.
Well, it was a road that we didn't want to have to take, but we took it. We felt like, given all the circumstances that was presented before us, in particular in our lives, that it was a necessary thing to do. And so from September the 25th of 2016, when we officially had our first worship service, from that day to now, a whole year later, it's been a beautiful journey and ride, and nothing but growth and just the freedom and experience that was meant to be there from day one.
So, I mean, let's go back. Let's go back, because that's history. So we know that, okay, there was something before Impact. Let's talk about prior to Impact. What brought us basically to Impact? What got us here?
Well, I give the short end of a long story.
All right.
We'll take it.
I think I mentioned this past week, in the whole tenure of my pastoring, from training to just kind of being out on my own. In January, it'll be 9 years. It'll be 9 years. Or will it be 10? I don't know, man. It's like right there. So that journey started from Mount Zion Mission East, and pastored there 3 years. Then went on to Mount Zion, interim pastor there for a couple of years, a year and a half. Then after leaving there from just church tension, whatever that looks like, in a multiplicity of ways, God just gave the vision that I didn't know that He was going to give. Wasn't prepared to at the time, didn't know how to church plant, didn't know what that looked like. And so God gave victory in my heart, in my mind, and it actually started with me just kidding around. Like, we were going through so much personal things at church, and that kind of affected our household. And one Sunday morning I got up and was like, man, I'm leaving today. And she was like, come on, let's go. I was like, we ain't going nowhere. You know, God said, kind of stick this out. This was when we were at Mount Zion. And so by this point, I did my 3 years at Mount Zion, came back. My pastor died, Pastor Rouse. And then we was in a year's search at my home church where I came out of. Still love that church to this day, always will. And I was like, if we leave, I said, if I started a church, what would I call it? I said, you know what, back? I said, I call it victory, because we coming out of this thing. And that's how we got victory. I was like, and I don't want to be associated with a denomination per se. I said, we'll be denominationally independent. We'll just stand on our own, just do the work of the kingdom. So I was in the bathroom on a Sunday morning. It was like, we'll name it Victory Church. And then I looked into some marketing ways, how to market and brand, and looking at the trends of denominations and how people feel about that. People just want to worship and grow and get sound teaching. So it was like, we wouldn't be Baptist, we wouldn't be Pentecostal. What's the hub city of where we're from? How do you market yourself with a vision that reaches across the world? So we got St. Louis. Even though at the time I'm from, the church was birthed out of East St. Louis. It wasn't just about, the vision wasn't about just this centralized area. It was about the world, and how do you make a name user friendly. And so the name St. Louis had been around for forever, and I think, I've taught that there are some places in Illinois that uses the name St. Louis for marketing and branding wise. So it was like, let's keep it simple, Victory Church St. Louis. And so what was the vision and goal for that? To impact the world by imprinting God's image. Which she has on her shirt. She made that shirt. Shameless plug, right? So that was the vision. And so for the world to see what the ministry is going to look like and what the ministry is going to do, we needed a name that fit what the story was, who we are. So the story was victory from Mount Zion. And that was a personal struggle, a personal thing. What those battles look like. And then who are we? We're the church, regardless if it's a name on front. And then where are we? St. Louis. So you keep it simple, and that road from Mission East to Mount Zion to actually stepping out on my own. I have no pastor. I have, none of that, no covering from that aspect. And then other brothers and men that I reached out to became elder brothers and father figures in the ministry. And so, man, I just hopped out there. And actually at that time, it wasn't just me. So it's not me just taking the credit. As the visionary, absolutely, the guy gave the vision to. But, man, I asked, 7 people that at that time to come and join me and help plant this church with me and help move it forward and saying, hey, here's what God gave me. Do you want to participate in this? They agreed to it. And, man, that was a historic moment from victory until 2016 when God just laid it on my heart in a pressing way to make another transition as victory to impact. And so that's kind of that short end. And that's the real short end. You're talking about like a 5-year span of history there.
Okay, so in the beginning, did the elder triangle, did that work? Was it working?
At least from my standpoint, it did. At least for probably most people in the congregation, as we can tell that now, looking back in hindsight to where we are. But we didn't, and I make this clear, we didn't use elders in the strictest sense of the New Testament term. Okay, so there was components and elements of biblical structure to it. So where in the beginning when we established that, moving from a congregational form church where the whole body of the church votes, and then with the deacons act as elders, etc. So we moved from that to there was no voting. So it was pastor-led, elder-supported. That's how we ran it. Which now it's pastor-led, staff, and leadership supported, which is something we probably may get off into in this conversation. I don't know. But so what that looked like was there was not an equal vote, which why you use the term triangle. It was, hey, here's our opinion, here's our thought, pastor, whatever direction you choose to go in, we'll follow and support that. But here's what we have to say. 9 times out of 10, it was like an unofficial vote. Okay. So that's how that kind of looked in the beginning. And so I think it did work well at the time. And so time went on, and there was some opinion to have that model changed to more of a plurality of equality and vote and power and influence. So it went from one form to another form, which was under the same umbrella of eldership. So that's what that looked like. And I think, well, that was the shifting. Part of the shifting of the dynamics of our church. One of the things when establishing victory was, and you look at it in the mission statement, and it's the same as impact. The same vision. It's the same thing, which is in the beginning is to pretty much shorten, relinquish ourselves from total dominance of denomination by letting the Word of God supersede denominationalism. And from that standpoint, it's more the political end. I know people don't want to talk about church. It doesn't matter what you do. Politics is in everything. Yes. So, and I hate to kind of put a pin in this part because people try to use it is the church and they're supposed to have politics. If you play politics with yourself. Should I do this? Should I do that? You try to convince yourself whether or not you should make a decision or not. You're playing politics with yourself. Politics is in everything. And politics it isn't always a bad thing. Right. In some instances, if it's used the wrong way, it is. So the point from that kind of governance was because when I was in Mount Zion at the time, I mean, if people were to just be transparent, and this is nothing against it. Now we've grown to a place, man, where we, see some of the same brothers we was, had a difference of opinions with before. We shake hands, we hug, and everything is fine. But it was the politics from that said, no, now it's time to plant. And so, and it all comes in the politics from that. Said, no, now it's time to kind of move on. And really, the evolving comes from what people relatively think is right, whether it's me or whether it's you. What do you think the right thing is to do, or the right thing to do is in leading or into pushing vision forward, or to X, Y, and Z? Mm-hmm. So with Victory, in that sense, it's the same with Mount Zion. Our views don't line up together, so how does this fly? And what does this look like? So when we get here, different views, different opinions, so then how does this fly? So if it had stayed the same, I say all that to say, if it had stayed the same, it does not change the people who sat around the table, including myself, views or opinions. So it's about an attitudinal issue more than the political issue. So if it had stayed pastor-led, elder supported, and I'm just using this, I'm not saying that this is the case, this is a hypothetical. If it had stayed pastor-led, elder supported, but you still had such a different view of opinion that you was unwilling to follow that leadership, you still got a gaffe. You still got a conflict. And that conflict spews over to the congregation, which is what you want to try to avoid.
Well, just to be honest, I had my moments when it was like what I would do to go back to just being able to go to church and go home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Go have
pure. I call them pures.
Right.
Pures.
Pures. Back in the back.
Just to be able to, sit down, have a great worship,
right.
Go eat, go take my Sunday nap, and that was it. Not knowing the inner workings of everything, and it was difficult. When we got married, I moved here from Alabama, so that was a change. Within our first year of marriage, I had a baby. That was a change. He was pastoring one church. Had to get used to those people. Then we had to move to another church. Had to get used to those people. Right. Wait a minute, we're not going to stay here?
Right.
Wait, we're going somewhere else?
Right now.
So, being a newlywed, having a new baby, everything, it was just change after change after change after change. And it was like as soon as I would get comfortable somewhere, then there was another change. But I had to support my husband because I saw what he was going through. Right. So, and that's difficult for a wife because, I still got a fighting spirit that I have to pray about.
Most definitely. I'm over here like, I don't see how you did it.
There were several Sunday mornings when I would wake up and be like, do I have to go?
Don't want to go.
And, and would cry and be like, if I see someone,
see somebody, most definitely.
My mood may change, and it was hard.
Putting on the facade.
Ministry has grown me to a point where I've matured to now speak out more about certain things that I wouldn't speak out about before. Some things not say anything about when I used to run to people's aids or do whatever and say about. And I think it grew me that now I'm at the point where it's like, if it's something I need to say, I want to say, I'm going to say. Like, I don't care what somebody else thinks or what they have to say. If I feel like it needs to be said, I'm going to say it. And at that point, I think that process of humility kind of just grew me. Because at Mount Zion, man, there was so many things of having to preach every Sunday as if nothing was going on. And I think that's one of the most difficult things. And then telling her, like, yo, you just still got to sit there. Yo, you just still got to, don't treat people a certain kind of way and you know how they feel. Like, everything from people wishing that I was dead. And
wow.
Anonymous phone calls telling me to drop out. I remember a lady on like the back pew on a Sunday morning just stood up right before I was about to get a text and was like, "You the devil," And I was like, I don't even look back. And then still preach hard every Sunday. Being told, I want to shoot you in the back of the head. Being in a choir stand. Being, somebody saying our baby was a government baby after our child was born.
Somebody hit your mom.
push my mom, you know, church, you know, all that. And I know
that
some,
right there was fighting.
and you know, I know some people say, see, that's why I don't go to church. That's not why you should not go.
Right.
And if I can still make it, and she can still make it, and we can still press on, this thing God has put in place called the church has to be real. So it's not one of these things where you walk through the front door and I ain't coming back to usher that smile at me. Like, I have no pity for a person. Like, it's like, come on, you have no clue what somebody's been through. And so I couldn't afford, she couldn't afford to change, because if people saw it, then Satan would use that to pluck up the word. And that was difficult, because I had to keep my eyes on the mission of the preaching, of the teaching. So you could not see me go home and cry. You could not see me walk the streets at night, just get out the bed, hating going to meetings at that era. And so then when I moved, and that moved on from, you know, from Mount Zion to Victory, that stuff grows you. So, I mean, it was the Spirit of the Lord, man. It just kept the mission going. I'm not a preach. I can't give you my feelings. I can't throw rocks from the pulpit. And so, and she hung in there with that too, because that was hard for her. I'm saying, keep your composure. That's tough. It's just so much foolishness. We done heard everything from her fighting somebody in a club, like where, like a club
that I don't go to.
like no, like we don't even think about going to a club. But she was, you know, but she was fighting over me. I think that's what it was. So whatever. I mean, I've heard, we've heard everything from stealing money, from trying to change. I change names of church. And here's what's crazy. When I was at Mount Zion Mission East, I was under a pastor. I was pastoring.
Right.
So that wasn't my church. He told me to come back. Then when I get to Mount Zion, I was in the running. I had my resume in. So I was the interim, but it wasn't my church. Mm-hmm. So for me leaving, that's my home church. I was a member.
You was a member. Right.
So it wasn't like you pastoring these churches and you breaking them up. No, I left my home church, started a church. And then that church that I planted, once I left there, I mean, we left. I mean, it wasn't even like, you know, we're still in a year without even our own building. We're doing more than what we had with the building, and we still, membership wise, by the hundreds.
Yeah.
So it's like, no, there's no breaking up churches. People don't know the story behind that. There is no, I don't have any kids outside of the ones I have with her. You know, we ain't in clubs. You know, just whatever.
Yeah,
right.
Stealing money from the church. People would just find anything.
I mean, and because when we went from Victory to Impact, it was crazy because it was like at the moment where Bishop Scott was leaving Central Baptist. So that's all I heard. He leaving to go to, I'm like, why would he leave his church that he, like, God gave him that vision? And I'm thinking, and it was crazy because people were saying it. I started kind of believing. I'm like, oh, we going to Central.
Yeah, you know what's? I remember that it was in July of last year. So my birthday and our anniversary was around the same time. We went to Dallas.
Yeah, you were out down there interviewing for churches.
Yeah. And the week, like, so it was like the week before I wasn't there. The week that week I went there. Like 3 weeks, and then it came back. Well, you know, he was trying to apply for a church. Like, okay, it was just satanic. All of it is just.
But what's crazy about it is, we do that every July.
Every July. Every May, Labor Memorial Day, I'm gone except for this year. 10 years I've been gone, same year. Same birthday anniversary weekend. I'm not preaching it. I do the same format every year. People just ain't caught on to it. It's like, oh, he knew what he was doing because he was interviewing.
Like, I remember them Sundays. I was like, I came to church, pastor, not preaching. You're not here. Yeah. So, yeah. Wow, it's crazy.
And you know where that comes from? People not knowing your move. And when people don't know what you know, they come up with conspiracy theories.
Assumptions.
And for them, they come up with what they think is deductive reasoning, not even knowing they're being used by Satan. Because once they tell it to one person, they tell it to another person, and that person tells it to another person.
Right.
And so by the time it gets out there, you've ruined the reputation of a person. And you may not even been trying to.
Yeah.
You may have just been telling your thoughts.
Right.
Because by the time you tell what you think one way, by the time it get back, it wasn't even told the same way you said
I
it.
didn't add
So now, especially, and it hurts when it comes from the people at your table. It hurts when it comes from your congregation. If it comes from these places, because these are the people you supposed to love, and they're supposed to love you back.
Right.
Right.
And so now it gets out in the streets that well, he messing with this girl, or he messing with that girl, and we dealt with those issues.
Because he was walking 2 steps behind him.
Yeah, we dealt with those issues.
Right.
Of course, women issues always gonna come up.
Almost definitely.
You just deal with it. I mean, you deal with it. And
Everyday man issues.
yeah.
Yeah.
And when you're in a place of power and position, man, like there's some things. Some people, if they see me talking to another attractive woman, he must
Too
be.
long.
Especially with me being younger, and how they think, whether a person thinks I'm attractive or not. It's always a lot of times this association. If I'm talking to somebody less attractive in their mind, he ain't talking. Right? It's like, man, we are crazy as people.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not the only one. There's other pastors go through that.
I can believe it.
And some of us have actually messed up, but some of us haven't messed up. And so there's a culture that just drives the whole thing to bash and kill and destroy the reputation of the pastor. Because if you pull him down, you pull the ministry down.
Oh, that's for sure.
That's why you shouldn't go to his church, because I heard he a womanizer, or and it was crazy because first ladies do stuff too, but it's always the or the deacon, or
Right.
it's like
the people in the congregation.
Right.
yeah. So I don't have any fears. I had one then.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't even at first it was, but then it just turned into a concern, and then that concern turned into just step out on faith. And my concern now is healthy. And I'll tell you what those two things are. One, it was, how in the heck am I going to tell people I'm leaving?
Mm-hmm.
They followed me. And what I mean by follow me, I don't feel like I need to go all super biblical. The calling and the Lord who is in me, and the gifting and the calling. That's what I mean. Okay, so when I say me, whoever watches this, and I say that so Satan don't have any leeway with people's minds, because it's not me. Clearly, I know, and I say that to the church all the time.
Right.
So stay out of the inbox.
Yes, right. So my fear was like what are people gonna say? Like this is, and I'm just being transparent. When I left Mount Zion, Mount Zion took a hit with the size of the congregation.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big struggle, because our hearts were at that church. And the people who were still there, I still love them. And there ain't nothing personal with me. Nothing. It was a move I felt like I had to make for me, my family, and what God was telling me to do with the people who he was attached to my life.
All right.
So then there's like, man, you moved us from over here to the wilderness. And now we got like a little location in Cahokia. We did it because the stuff we did was historic. I don't take anything in that regard away from the elders, the congregation, man. Like the hustle and grind, man. They are some smart, brilliant people that sat around that table with me, and so that was historic. Y'all heard Mike Jones say just not too long ago, just to move. Mm-hmm. So once I got to that point and we got people settled, it was like, now I gotta unsettle you. It's almost like you had a long day at work and you got home and you finally went to sleep. Mm-hmm. And while you're in your deepest sleep and I wake you up and say, hey, it's emergency, we gotta go to the hospital in the middle of the night. And you're like, but I just got home. So that was a concern of mine. And when I got to the point where I thought things were at a level where it was going to be destructive to the people of God, to the people of that church, to the vision, to what God put in me, it was like, I can no longer be concerned about what people think, what the community will think. And I knew they was going to say something. And that took another bold step of faith to be like, yo, we doing it again. We out. If it's just me and you, God gotta attach to us who should be with us. And now looking at hindsight, it was just another prune, another tree.
Okay, so coffee and conversation a year later. Pastor, you know they say with every relationship, communication is the key. So I'm quite sure that a lot of impactors like myself wanted to know, why didn't you communicate with us the things that were going on, the things that were transpiring behind closed doors, so that we truly could have had your back and fought with you, so that we wouldn't have to split?
Yeah, well, the biggest issue is, I think he asked a question earlier about fear. And I think that's that was one of the undercurrents at the time. But at the same time, it was like fear of taking people through this again, of a church conflict, not even a split. And at the same time, having a concern in a shepherding pastoral way of not injuring people. Mm-hmm. So that dichotomy, which is false, conflicted. So what that looked like was, we even got to that part of the conflict when it was a push to change the constitution of the church. Because remember, we said it was pastor-led, elder supported. Mm-hmm. Right. And after pressure, man, it was like, we had some heated meetings with, it was even some at the table, one in particular, at the moment when I was like, I'm not doing it. It was like, well, I can't be a part of this, and was getting up to leave, and I was like, all right, bye. And then everybody's like, wait a minute, you need to think about this. Like, it was like, we had like some heated times. And like, that's what, again, that's what family does. But I wasn't willing to give in to it. And eventually, man, at one meeting, man, I just kind of like blew up and kind of lost it. And was just like, you know what, forget it. I don't care what y'all do. If y'all want to vote, y'all want to have some equal say, y'all want to have an equal voice, y'all feel like y'all just as much part of this, okay, fine, whatever, we can change it. And once that happened, and it went on black and white, see, what people don't realize, when you put something on black and white, not only is it on black and white, but we did stuff the right way. And I got to give credit to that. We did. So we filed with, you got to file with the county or whatever the case is. Right. So your constitution is filed. So if you go to court, the judge don't know what's going on at your church and is concerned. Well, he's going to say, did you govern yourself by how you said you would govern yourself, and here's how I see it. Mm-hmm. So the pastor don't have the right, or the church don't have the right, to just put a board member off. Right. So what they did was tie my hands. Now, before I made that move, I could have said, in the technicality, I ain't got no board no more. But that's not me. That's not my heart. And I care for them, and wanted us to be unified and do the right thing. And so that was a huge conflict. So for a year, it was a battle between who's really leading the church. That was the issue. And slowly but surely, through classes, through conversation, through whatever stuff started to leak out, and people was kind of like, who? I ain't following her. I ain't following him. My leader is the pastor. Well, I understand how you feel, but this is what our Constitution said. We moved from pastor-led, elder supported to plurality of elders. And so that's a conflict with people, because for one, it's not really majority our culture. When I'm saying our culture, majority African. That's not our culture of church. Mm-hmm. And so that started that conflict. So for a year, I'm battling with this concept, because I was like, man, I ain't fully sold on it. And some at the table respected the fact that I wasn't really sold on it. And it took like that whole year. I was like, I did it, but I ain't really sold on it because this is gonna cause too much conflict. And my whole thing was I didn't want the people who just came out of all this conflict from Mount Zion to be like, dude, we going through it again. And that's, I was trying to guard that kind of conversation from being exposed. Because I didn't want to injure people that way. And if we could have figured it out behind closed doors, it's just like when your parents arguing and you kids. You know, the argument shouldn't happen in front of the kid. And I'm not saying people are children or like that.
Right. Well, you're using an analogy.
But it's like if you're at this tier of leadership, if you can handle it behind closed doors, handle it. If we could have came to some for real resolve, you know, that would have been great. Mm-hmm. But then when it got to the point, like I mentioned about the voting, since we are equal, we go vote you not to preach that Sunday. We go vote to let him teach on Sunday morning worship about the plurality of eldership. Like, it's so many doors you open up doing that and following suit and that, and you know, that was never my conviction anyway. So, you know, and then this whole thing came up about women in leadership. You don't want a woman to be like, that's just like whatever. I don't even pay attention to nobody say that. Because my thing was this: the 3 women that was there, I picked them to help start the church. So like, kill that noise.
Right.
It was never about women.
Mm-hmm.
Because another argument spun out of that about women. Because I was like, it was like, yo, we gonna tell the church we follow the New Testament model of elders. And my thing was, you can't follow a New Testament model of elders with women. Not that I was against women. My thing was, if you're saying this is New Testament, it's not. I don't care what kind of that was culturally then, this, that, and the other. Like, I'm not buying that. Like, you can't sell me that. I know too much to be sold on that. So like before, when I used elder, I made it clear this is not the strictest sense. Because if I said strict sense, I couldn't have women. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like we now have our first woman minister coming through.
Sure.
It ain't never been about that with me. Like, that's crazy. That's, to me, another attack from Satan. To just try to disparage and discredit, like, the real effort. So my thing was, my other fight in that was, I'm not getting up in front of the church on behalf of this boy and say that we are following a New Testament model, and that's not my conviction, and that's clearly not what the New Testament shows. Now, if that's your interpretation or whatever you want to come up with, that's yours. But I ain't getting up there. I'm not getting up there saying that. Now, if we had just said we ain't using the strict New Testament model, I can't argue with that. That was the same case of cause. But to say that this is Bible and we're using it straight from the New Testament, I couldn't be sold on that. So when all of that stuff came to the forefront, when we could no longer resolve things in the back, because now stuff had to come to the forefront because people had to see the changes, then it changed the way you manage the ball game.
Right.
So it was now, at this point a year later, there was no keeping it from the people, because people were seeing it. Right. Why you say that? Mm-mm.
Yeah, you heard.
What's that about? And it was going on so much. And it's like, you know, and that's what really spawned it. When I agreed to changing the Constitution. And I could have lost a few at the table, and I was willing to do that. But it was like, man, I trusted them from the beginning. They trusted me. I want to think the best, this, that, and the other. So, you know, it kind of went from there. And it got changed. And so once it was changed, people in the church was like, well, why couldn't we put them out? Because if they wanted to, they could dissolve the whole church legally. Not saying that they would. Like, there is no, once it's in black and white and it's filed, there is no, you know. And for me, it was about doing stuff the right way. Like, I was the owner of the account. I wasn't on the account. Like, I didn't write any checks. I couldn't take any money out the bank, but I could say who was on the account or not. So I could just be like, you know what? I'm gone. I'm shutting this whole account down, take the money, whatever.
Right.
Or put different people on the account. Like, it's not about that. Like, I'm not, again, at war with them. Never was. We never was. So when people ask the question, like, why didn't we take the building back? We ain't at war with nobody. Let them have the building.
Right.
Let whoever had the building have the building. So
it seemed like people started around the table power tripping, so to say. Is that what it felt like it was? Like, with changing the Constitution, was that being brought by one person strongly? Maybe like Dwayne Cotton?
Well, it was, but then it became a collective thing. So it got to the point where it was like, I don't blame one person for this agenda of wanting to make it a plurality.
But do you think he was feeding it into them outside of meetings so that they could be unified? You know, I'm having this meeting with you apart, but on other days we're having this meeting so I could feed this into them. So,
well, to be exclusive and say that's what he did, him in particular, you know, I won't say. I have my own feelings about it, but what I do know for sure is that a year before it even came up, he brought that to the table and brought it to my attention. Like, you know, and you know, it was like one of these things that was like, well, Pastor, you said if this model doesn't work, then we'll come back and look at another model.
Okay.
So that's what they said, and what he said, that was the presentation. But then my question was, who it ain't working for? The 7 people at the table or the whole church?
Right.
So, you know, and it couldn't have been a whole church, because, so, you know, and I remember, and again, I've never said this is about Ryan Young, because it ain't. This is about God's ministry, kingdom, and us. But I remember sitting at the table when we was going through this. And it was like, the church, I remember him saying, the church is not on your shoulders. We're self-sufficient. And I never made the remarkable statement at the time, like, it's on me. But at the end of the day, when you look, just be honest about it. We know it's all about Jesus. That's not what we're talking about.
Right.
Ryan Young is still the leading face of, and from the human perspective. And I remember him saying, like, if something happened, pretty much, we still gonna go on, we still gonna be fine, ain't nothing gonna change. And he used this terminology. He was like, Pastor, you're delusional. We was in a meeting that if I left, or if something happened, you know, it's like, you ain't it was clear. He said it, you know, like, it's victory is no longer right on your shoulders.
Wow.
It's like, okay. And I was like, all right, cool. You know, and like, people would think like you would get mad or something, like, well, at the time I was, but like, I ain't even mad at, you know, none of that. Like, again, he's one of the people I have some of the deepest history with. Man, I learned so much from him. I have. So I'm not trying to just sit up here and like paint like this bag. This was just where we were in the history of our lives at that point.
Sure.
And even now, even though the relationships are altered, you know, and like, so some of those kind of things were shocking to me, hurtful, you know. You know, so it's just kind of like, man, I don't even care what anybody even said back then. Now, and it's like crazy, because it's like when I mean, I am so okay. My life is so okay. Like, we at a place now, like, I don't know if the Lord allowed, but we trying to have another baby. You know, we got a new crib, and we ain't stole no money from nobody, no nothing. You know, our life is better than ever. The freedom of our church is better than ever. I just don't have no concern, really, from that perspective. But I remember it and learn from it, but I have no pain from it, man. I wish that brother the best in his life, though, sister, everybody. Like if, and again, if there's ever a time where relationships can be reconciled, because see, here's the thing, forgiveness and restoration are two different things. You can forgive somebody and not restore them to the same position that they once were. And I'm not expecting any of them to restore me to the same position. If so, if ever in life, great. If not, you know, Godspeed, you know. And it's not even me being crash, y'all. I'm just being totally transparent about it.
Real and raw.
You mentioned you said something about that 7 could have dissolved the church. Hindsight being 2020, what if they had? What would have been the detriment or the fallout if they would have dissolved?
If they just said, "Ain't no victory no more,"
right?
Or if they could have voted to change the name, they could have voted to do whatever if they was on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
They knew the detriment. You lose people. You lose people. You lose money. You lose money. You lose a lot. That your bills are tied. I mean, and then you miss the point of why you have the people there. That's to teach people the word of God. Ain't no point, you know. Other than that, it becomes an organization. So I don't think, you know, that wasn't their heart. That's, you know, not their intention. You know,
never would have really gotten that way, but
right.
they could have.
Yeah.
And so they never would. That trigger never would have got pulled.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
No.
Gotcha.
Irritated. It ain't gonna happen.
No, but it's just an interesting thing when you think about it. I mean, you know, if you know how we can be just as people. We people first, right?
Most definitely.
You
Yeah.
know, well, you know, if I can't have it, you can't have it.
Yeah. Some people do that.
You're
Yeah.
delusional. Yeah.
But I mean, again, I give that side, and I want everybody to be clear. Like I get that's where we were.
Right.
We bumped heads.
Mhm.
Period. And that's the tough thing because the history of our relationships, these people have been great to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where the emotional tough part
that
comes
has
in.
to be like a heavy hitter because you had rapport. And I mean like rapport to, we talked about it earlier, where some of these people were like family members, you know. You grew up with their children, or, you know, I looked up to them as an uncle, aunt, whatever, and then that's where the hurt came from, you know, like they always say, you know.
And you know what? That's the crazy thing, because sometimes, like, using that word delusional, I don't even think some people know they doing wrong. You know, sometimes people actually think they doing the right thing. They just don't know they doing the wrong thing. And then, like, you got to look at, like, I was the youngest person at the table. I have people, like, maybe a couple of 70-year-olds, a couple of 60-year-olds, a couple of, you know, 50-year-olds, a couple of 40-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one in their 30s at the time, maybe like 39, you know, then there's me. You know, and I know, and I'm not, you know, I know how that can go sometimes. And it's just like, even though you're older, real humility, and I'm not saying this was their case, I'm just saying in general, because I went through it in my own eye.
Mm-hmm.
Older does not always mean
Wise.
yeah.
Yes.
It should, but that's theory.
Age doesn't bring about maturity.
There you go. And I think I said this not too long ago. Getting old is not an option, but growing up is.
Mm-hmm.
So just because you lived a certain life or did a certain amount or had a certain amount of time on this earth, don't mean you got all the right answers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have all the right answers when it comes to pastoring, and I've been through a lot. Man, I gotta humble myself. There's gonna be some younger brothers come through doing something more innovative than me with the kingdom, and I need to just sit at the feet and learn.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's how you keep evolving.
Yeah, grow.
So again, I ain't got nothing. You know, I ain't got nothing against one of them. And I'm talking about any church journey. Life too short.
Mm.
And honestly, in my heart, if we could all talk and just be like, man, and move on, like, I would love that.
So, Pastor, tell us, what do you expect from Impact Church St. Louis in this upcoming year? Looking ahead to the next year.
Man, I'm gonna tell you, one of my major focuses, well, it's a few, which Reverend Kimbrough is. He gets paid to handle the ministries and run the office. So the development of our ministries and just what that looks like and how well they function and how they grow, which is on his plate. The expectation is that ministries really step up, and then our men really become more part, and our youth really grow. As great as we sing, we still have imperfections, just like any church and any ministries, right? So the working of ministries, especially outreach and inreach, grow and develop. But then church-wide, like this first year was about infrastructure. What do we look like? How do we maintain salaries? How do we maintain business? How do we keep order? How do we develop certain skills to be the church the Bible calls us to do? So like this first year, we've done some great things, whether it's send shoes to Haiti. We collected a lot of shoes to send to Haiti. Yeah. What we do with our technology, what we do with worship and ministry, how we help support our own with aiding, whether it's financial or spiritual or counseling to our own membership. Like, when we have a whole resume of things we've done just this year, contributing to people's lives, I expect that to continue. So with ministry and outreach, because that's our vision, impacting the world, the second year is about how do we get our home, you know, how do we got some infrastructure, and now you got to maintain it, and we got to get our own. And I think God can do something. If we thought 1400 Camp Jackson was awesome,
Miraculous.
Man, if we could stick to the vision, God's got some stuff, man. We ears haven't heard and eyes haven't seen, and I've been kicking the tires on some stuff, and I don't want to put that stuff out prematurely.
Right.
Like I told some of the brothers, you know, a couple of them, we went, and my wife we went and looked at a facility, even recently, and it's just kicking the tires. But like, until it's a bird in the hand, I ain't trying to get nobody hopes up high. I ain't trying to do none of that. We need to, I'm just being honest, we just need to get our money game up and trust God. So if we want something from God, if God has given us some ability to put forth some effort, then we got to do that. Faith without works is dead. You got faith for a building, then we need finances. Right. We need your resources, your gifts, whether you can paint, whether you can do whatever. So year 2 is like, we on a hunt. God, what door you opening up? Daddy, what's up? What you got for us?
Gotcha.
Okay.
So,
All right, y'all heard that.
Yeah.
We on the hunt. So that means
we are.
Get to work.
We are, and I think we're in a great position.
You can give at www.impactchurchstl.com.
Click the give now.
Give now.
It's a green panel.
Right. Right.
Pastor, Lady B, is there anything that you two want to share, anything that you want to say before we wrap things up here? Appreciate you two taking the time.
Yeah, well, yes.
So.
I just want to thank our church family, our impactors. They've been riding with us.
Oh my gosh.
They have been riding with us.
She gonna make me cry thinking about that, man. Like, seriously.
I mean, just the how they love on us, how they love on each other, how they love on our visitors.
Yeah,
that's the one thing. When we have visitors, people talk about how, oh my goodness, the church, they are just the spirit of the church, and just how, you know, we're in this small space, and, you know, they're not complaining. They're coming in, they do what they need to do, you know, they keep it moving, you know, so I want to thank them and, you know, commend them on their awesome work, and, you know, that's pretty much it. I love all of y'all. Thank y'all for the work y'all do.
Yeah, it's almost like going to the award show. Like, first I want to give honor to God. I want to thank God. I want to thank all the Impact family. But not like, seriously, the people, and I said this Sunday, the People are the engine to this.
Right.
Nobody has to believe in you. Nobody has to believe that God is doing anything with you. So when the people come together and say, man, we got to ride this out. I've said the story 1,000 times. I went to an elderly couple. And I said, they were the first group out of the whole church that said, I think we got to go. And the reason why is because their name was on that building. So I had to tell them. And I told them, I said in the living room, I said, I'll stay and take this whooping, what I don't think is whatever, for me. It's a whooping to me. I don't care what anybody else thinks. I'll stay. Because I asked you to do something, you did it. Not because of anybody else at that table. You did it because you believe in me. And they said, if you stay, we leaving.
Wow.
They had got to that point.
Wow.
And she said, if we got to have church in my backyard, go. We going to support you. And the husband said, you got us. You got our whatever gift we got, finances we got, wherever we support you. And once I got that confirmation, it was like, it's a done deal. And running to other people like y'all, you know, sitting down that conversation with you. Pastor, what do we need to do? I was like, well, Jeff, let me tell you why it don't matter.
It don't matter, yeah.
I said this publicly about the pits. Katie called me. Why you ain't tell me you left? Sister Pitts, I was trying to get around to calling to explain to you what happened. I don't want it. And man, I don't want to know what happened. I just want to know where we going. Like, that's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. It's so, our church family, like, people to this day saying crazy stuff, like, let's just be raw, like,
Go ahead.
he gonna leave. He gonna go to a bigger church. I ain't going nowhere. I can't see that. I am loyal to the people who are loyal to me. You start changing face, it's a different issue. But our experience together, man, is what makes us who we are. And people who aren't a part of that story, they get grafted in as if they are. And they are recipients of that same love, that same emotion, that same spirit of God that resides in all of us. So the first thing for me is just, man, thank you, God, for leading your people to stay together, to trust, because it's a hard thing to trust. So, and then just the amount, it's just, we cannot overemphasize the amount of things we've been able to do. Our media has gone to another level. Our music. Speaking of, just got out the studio. People don't even know, like, just got out the studio. We got 2 songs. A song that I wrote and a song Jeremy wrote. And he composed the music to both. Our offering song and a welcome song, which you can get on iTunes, Spotify. So by the time people were saying this now, you know, the stuff we're doing in the community. Man, we pay for people gas. We bought groceries for people. We've done laundry for people. We've prayed for people. We've given water out. You know, by the hundreds. So it's like, and then we do things outside the box at our church because that's who we are. New Year's comedy show, and we give stuff away. Man, we just give it. Chick-fil-A, we give it. The vendors, the black vendors, free.
Family and friends.
Give it.
Right.
The only requirement for the vendors was give something away to somebody.
Because for the vendors, there was no vendor fee, there was
No,
no
nothing.
anything. Come set up, be exposed. We bringing the people here. All we ask is that you get.
We pay for everything, yeah.
Yeah.
So if we get that spirit within ourselves, and give to ourselves the same way we give to others. Man, we get better like that. We get anything like that.
Then I see why they say you're going to leave again, because you're going to have to move from where you're at now to a bigger space.
Bam.
You're going to have a bigger
Bam.
congregation. So they're not
Bam.
telling the story.
Bam.
You're going to leave again,
Bam.
but we coming with you.
I believe
We
that.
coming with you.
Because, and again, it's no arrogance intended. Like, you know, like last week, there was nowhere for people to sit.
Nowhere.
The second service, 9 o'clock, full.
11 o'clock. Packed.
Can't even, you
Not
know.
even full. Packed.
And no, is it like that every single Sunday? No. But boy, when it is, it's like leaving out of a Cardinals game, you know. And that's God.
It is.
Because nobody, and we say this all the time, nobody does this in the same city twice. And for people who think I broke up churches 4 times, because when I started at Mission East, it was 15 people.
Mm-hmm.
Our roster grew to over 200.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That got broke up because I had to come back. Mount Zion instantly grew in numbers because some of those people, the Sister Kims and the Jackie and April and Miss Ramsey and Mary Thomas and man, Ryan to this day.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
still with you.
Ryan to this day, seen me when I preached my very first sermon, the first Sunday in January as a pastor. You know, I had hair on my head. They was with me. They still there. Like, I love those people.
All right.
Love them. So, man, we just got great things, man. And I want people that when they come to our church, I'm a bow tie suit guy sometimes. I'm not. That's us. We're not that.
Traditional.
Right. We keep some tradition, but at the same time we're progressive. We're traditional progressive people.
I like that.
And that's, you know, I believe in our culture. I believe in our traditions that we have that are good.
Mm-hmm.
But we're progressive.